Hello, hello. We are back again for more interviews from IGDN members all around the world. And we've got a North American guest again on the call now. I'm joined by Crystal Mazur who's a freelancer and has lots of credits all over the place. So Crystal, tell us something about your work in the industry.
Yeah. So I'm a freelance writer and I got started, I want to say it was around 2012, 2013, somewhere around there. Um, and I started off with like a small little supplement for a open license game called Frosthaven, and I wrote a Halloween supplement from there.
I'm shocked that you wrote a Halloween supplement.
I know, right? It's almost like that's the thing I love writing about the most. And from there, the person who did the layout was Aloy Lasanta, who ended up hiring me from PIP System because he liked what I had written for that game. And so I ended up working on PIP System. It went through Kickstarter, did really well in Kickstarter, and then went to it got published and it ended up winning an ENnie in the 2018 ENnies for Gen Con. And from there, that snowballed into a whole bunch of other things.
Right. So that's like your second thing that you worked on.
That was my second thing that I've ever worked on in the industry. Yep.
Wow.
I got very, very lucky. That was like a fate smiled upon me that day.
Sure. That's like, yeah, that's when you it's when you roll with disadvantage and get 2 20s.
Yes. So the person who hired me was trying to get me in the industry for years, and I'm an educator by trade. And I was like, I'm always too busy, like I can't be writing this stuff. I'm not a good writer. I'm not a writer. Like all of these excuses. And finally he was like, here, I need however many words with this game setting for this particular event. You have until this day. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm doing this. And he's like a very, very good friend of mine. I've been friends with him for almost 20 years now at this point. So it was about 12-ish when we did all of this. So he knows like where he can push me and where he can't. So he
I recently talked to some other people about how to break into the industry or whatever, and it is so common of a story. I find that it's like, oh, somebody who was already in saw something in me and asked me to contribute something. It's like it does happen that you can like just send a message to a company and get them to pick you up, but like it's almost always like someone vouches for you and brings you in.
Yep.
So like making those connections with other people is so important. As as you move, I guess, closer or along the line or closer into the circle, however you want to draw the metaphor or whatever.
Yep.
And then, I don't want to, there's so many directions we could go with talking about like getting started and advice for freelancers. And I know you do all kinds of stuff at this point about advice for freelancers. You could talk about that and have for a while. But tell us some more about like what's kind of your current what are you promoting currently as far as like a project that just came out or is about to come out or is funding right now? What's a project that you're working on now that's out?
So I'm not currently on any Kickstarters. But a couple of things have come out very recently that I worked on. The first one is going to be Kids Guide to Monster Hunting has finally been published. And that was a Kickstarter goal for PIP System core book. And it is like Gravity Falls or Are You Afraid of the Dark? Stuff like that, all rolled up into a kid-friendly. I say kid-friendly because you can play it as adults. But you can absolutely scale it down to play with kids, and you can adjust the scare level for them. I have written in mechanics for consensual body horror, which is great. Like that's a huge draw for a lot of people where they're like, wait, kids can actually consent to like having weird stuff happen to them, and they can stop it at any time. That's really cool. And so that's been a huge draw for a lot of people when I talk about that and how I designed that.
Awesome.
A couple other things. Sorry,
Yeah, sure.
like a whole bunch of stuff came up like recently.
Yeah.
I got to work on Frosthaven, which is a board game, which is the expansion for, or it is a expansion continuation of Gloomhaven. That came out recently, and I wrote a couple of small scenarios for there. And then PIP
Nice.
System Spycraft, which is our primer, came out. So
Awesome. So like you say, lots of credits.
a lot of stuff came out.
Yeah. Yeah. And is there anything that you want to tease about that like is coming soon that you're working on, or is that all like, you don't violate any NDAs or whatever, but
Yeah.
like, I'm sure you've got multiple projects on the go at any one time.
Yeah, so I have 2 projects currently that I'm working on, that I'm contracted for, and one is for the campaign dossiers for Never Going Home, which I'm not going to go into detail about, but I can talk about that I'm on it. And the other thing is that I am working, again, I can't really talk about details, but I'm working with I'm working on the Black Ballad with Storyforge, who that's Rick Hines' company, which uses 5e rules, and it's all about it's a cleric based setting, and it's what happens after death, and what happens when souls keep cycling back and forth, and how that can actually mess up the whole universe, and how chaos and order work together on that.
Oh, that all sounds pretty cool.
It's going to be a very, very cool setting, and I'm looking forward to everything that's going to be coming out. Hopefully in the next, I want to say it's at the beginning of next year is when we're going to start like officially announcing everything and putting stuff out there and doing Kickstarter.
All right, cool. Well, teaser, advance notice. Get ready for clerics, or post life adventures of clerics. That sounds promising. So I want to, and I'm sure we could talk about any one of these projects, blow them up a little bit, but I think the real the thing that you can bring to a conversation and to like people who are watching on the IGDN channel is talking about that freelancer aspect, because so many of the members are publishers in IGDN, and you're bringing sort of a different perspective into it. So can you give, I mean, I know you've done whole hour-long panels at Gen Con about, and at other places about freelancing and stuff like that, but can you give like just a couple minutes on like, maybe, I mean, I mentioned before about like, it's the people but like, what is your spiel? What do you tell somebody who's like, might be watching this video that wants to get into the industry, or well, what's the best practices for making it succeed, making a successful go of it as a freelancer in RPGs?
I could talk for a very, very long time about this. I'm going to keep it short. I'm going to direct people to my podcast about it later. So, but I would say that you are reaching out to people, first off, is that recognize where your own strengths and weaknesses are. And that can be very difficult, especially if you have social anxiety. That is really, really hard to network and navigate for. And so I have actually started encouraging freelancers or anybody in the industry, if you know somebody who is trying to kind of try to adopt them, and I say adopt, but like, if you are at like a networking event and you see someone sitting against the wall, go and introduce yourself, and then kind of try to bring them with you to try to like ease them into the conversation, because not everybody can network very easily. And that is a learned skill. And networking is definitely what gets you work. And then once you get to the networking, remember that there are 2 halves of the people that you are talking to. It's the half that you are going to be working for, and the other half that is possible. And I'm going to say personal relationship, but like when I talk about that, I'm talking about like being friendly and getting to know them and their personal lives and stuff like that. There are two people. When you're on a project, some of them are going to be your boss, and you have to recognize that. And if you want to keep personal relationships with them, you have to recognize that sometimes they're going to have to be hard on you. And you have to reconcile that. That's very hard to do. As humans, it's hard to take criticism. And so being able to kind of figure that out in yourself. I know I've worked for you for many, many things. I know you've had to kind of poke at me for some things, but I still see you as a friend. And I enjoy talking with you outside of everything and seeing you at conventions. So, it's a hard balance, but it's one that can be very healthy if you work at it.
Yeah, that's very good points. Very good point. And so obviously there is, like I said, you've condensed it down. We'll link to the other things. But the networking thing, let's expand a little bit and talk about, because this is ostensibly, I'm the convention coordinator. So I want to talk about conventions and what is how does it go at conventions? And I know you went to, you've been a guest at Gamehole Con in recent years. And so you can talk about that a little bit if you want to, but what is it, how it, that's where the networking happens, right? So talk about like that role, kind of that intersection between like con life as like an attendee and like, but I'm also like hunting for my next project that I'm going to work on.
Yeah. So one of the things that you definitely want to do when you're attending a convention is to try to look for events that have to do with networking, or panels or seminars where there are freelancers talking about either the industry or about their specific products. And that's because when you start to attend those things, and you start to attend them rather regularly, people start to recognize you. I've run specific panels, and I always try to do it differently. Like I'll have the same title for a panel, but I'll talk about different things. And I try to tailor it towards the crowd that we're at. So the panel is different every single time. I don't run off of a script. I hate doing that for conventions. That drives me nuts. I have like guiding questions, and that's about it. And so what I suggest doing is doing that, because your face will start to become familiar to people. May not recognize your name, but your face is going to be familiar. I can tell you that I have a small handful of people that come to every single panel. I don't know their names yet. I'm trying to work on that, because they come to almost every panel of mine. They sit, they talk, they participate, they offer suggestions, they ask questions, and they're actively engaged with me, which is really awesome to see that people keep coming back and listening, but also going to other panels. So, like you go around to other people, you don't have to continually follow the same person. Get different perspectives, go to different companies, go to a company that you never thought you'd write for. I honestly never thought I'd be writing, World War I history RPG horror, but like I found that I absolutely love it. That's not something I would have honestly done on my own. And so getting that push was definitely something I needed to be able to discover that about myself.
Yeah. And what is and maybe I'm trying to think what the kind of the how hard is it, like those network events, like those panels, like you said, if you see somebody by themselves, I know you've hired people, because I've also worked for you on PIP stuff. So, it goes, it's not always like a pyramid, I guess, in the industry of like people hiring up and further up. Like we're all kind of in this muddy lower tier of the industry where we're all kind of hiring each other for the different projects or whatever. So how easy is it to hire someone? Like if we talked about like pitching yourself a little bit, but like what's that process like of like picking the right person for the job
Yeah.
if you're hiring a freelancer?
I'm gonna say this, and please, like, it's
No,
not going to work for everybody,
sure.
but take a chance. Put
Mm,
yourself out there. If you are the freelancer looking for jobs, apply for the position or apply for the writing or do an open writing call for something that you think that you may not get, because you might be surprised. And if you're the one that's hiring, um, if and when you do take that chance on a new writer, understand that they are going to need, and I'm going to say hand holding, but it's not necessarily that case. It's they may not exactly realize exactly what the writing process and development process is for an RPG, especially if they're
yeah,
coming from like a novel background, which is very different.
sure.
Um, and so you have to be able to answer questions and be available to them should they be completely confused. You might
Mm,
have to provide templates for things like writer's guides or style guides. You might have to provide a template for like, I need tables, but I need them formatted this way. So here I made a document, you can copy and paste it.
mhm,
It was like stuff like that. You may have to do a little bit more back end work, but I try to, with the PIP system, as much as I can, hire people who have never written for RPGs before, ever. And I have had several people who have taken what they wrote for PIP system and used it to get other positions. And two of them were nominated for Ennies last year. One of
wow,
them was nominated for an Ennie the previous year. And I'm hoping more people that I've brought into the industry are nominated in the future, because I want them to do better than I am. Because that's the goal, right? Is to leave everything better than what you found it at. So
sure. Yeah, that's I hadn't heard that before, so that is quite a feather in your fancy hat to shepherd the people in like that. That is in and up. That's great. That's great. So I do want to, I'm sorry, you want to,
oh, I was gonna say, I don't talk about it a lot because I don't like, I hate bragging about myself or anything. So I don't really talk about like, oh yeah, I hire all these new people and a bunch of them got nominated. Like that's not like, yeah, it feels
well,
weird to brag to me, but it's something that like I am very proud of seeing them do. So
yeah, of course. That is, yeah, it's good to have a goal like that and then to see it achieve. Like that's great. That's great. And more people in the industry is it can hardly be bad.
yeah.
Um, so do you want to talk about conventions at all? Like in your neck of the woods, in your neighborhood, what
Oh
cons do
yeah.
you go to? What cons do you I mean, I know I've seen you at some of the big cons, so like you don't have to talk about those, but like,
Yeah.
you know, what is the local scene like, especially in this year where we're kind of coming back from a lapse? You know,
Yeah.
what's cons been like for you recently?
So the two, or the one con that's been most prolific for me the past years has been Gamehole Con. Gamehole Con is run by Alex Kemmer, who does an amazing job. He's also a freelance writer, and he works for Frog God Games. And so he very much understands the industry. And he has built up Gamehole Con to be where you get to play games with the people that make the games.
Hmm.
And that's the whole premise of that. So being able to go and run PIP system for people at Gamehole Con and then bring them in and then have them come to my panels, go do actual plays with the people that wrote Alien and play the game with them. Like that's really cool to do. Even like for me, like I'm like, yeah, I'm a huge nerd. I love this stuff. um, but it's also a fantastic way to network and get your name out there. I joke around a lot with a lot of my friends who aren't in the industry that I'm like the little sister where nobody realizes who I am until they meet me.
Hmm.
Um, and then I tell them my name and they're like, oh, okay, I know your name. So I'm it's funny when I have conversations around like with people and they don't realize who I am for the longest time. And I don't expect people to know who I am,
Sure.
but it's really amusing to see, and then see like how everything like changes when they figure it out. It's really a interesting study in people.
Have you had the opportunity to like they like somebody's like, oh, this cool thing got written, it's Crystal somebody, I don't remember, and you're like, that's me, look, here's my badge, I am she.
I had somebody come to a panel specifically about a book that I worked on Chicago by Night, and they come to a Chicago by Night panel, and they didn't realize that I was part of the panel, and they were talking to me in the crowd beforehand. And then I was like, oh, panel's going to be starting soon, so we should probably get to our seats. And he's like, yeah, sure, you want to sit next to me? I was like, no, I'm going up there. And he was like, wait, what?
that's amazing.
So yeah, that was very fun.
All right, is there a local game or writer or like other nerdy thing that comes out of wherever you're at that you want to give a shout out to specifically,
I mean, like
or,
specific. So
or direct people to,
yeah, like Wisconsin is full of nerds. It's great because like, you know, this is the birthplace of Dungeons and Dragons,
yeah.
and there's a huge Vampire the Masquerade scene that's within this area, just because of in the winter we have nothing to do. So what do we all do? We all game because we're nerds. And it's great. So there are a lot of creators that are here, like let's see here. Now I'm completely blanking, because like there's a lot of freelance writers here, and so like you just kind of randomly run into people, like Rob Weiland. He does Theater of the Mind, and he's actually lives right down the street from me, and so like, I will sometimes randomly see him in the grocery store. It's great. But yeah, like he's local. And if you haven't seen Theater of the Mind, you should definitely check them out. They do fantastic stuff. And they do even better stuff at Gamehole Con. And who is the other one? Oh, Ben Riggs, who did Slaying the Dragon, which is
Mhm.
if you are at all either interested in history or thinking about getting into the tabletop industry, Slaying the Dragon talks about TSR and the history from the perspective of the people that actually work there. It is a fantastic read and gives like an amazing insight into the industry.
My copy is still on my to be read pile, but
Oh,
it is on my to be read pile.
I think you will absolutely love it and
Well, I
totally
listened
nerd
to
out
his
about
podcast, so
it. Oh, okay.
I know I'm going to like it. I just haven't actually read the whole book yet. So
Yeah, and Ben Riggs is local too. He's also a teacher in the area. And then Matt Forbeck lives a little south of me, and he is like everywhere too. He's currently working on not X-Men, Marvel RPG. So but yeah, so those are like the creators around this area that off the top of my head. For conventions, it would be Gamehole Con, Gary Con, which is also in Lake Geneva, and it's kind of an homage to Gen Con and the first Gen Cons, run by Luke Gygax. So it's very much a D&D Pathfinder convention, but it's a fantastic one. And then Midwinter Gaming Convention, which is in January.
all right, so you've got a lot of creators and a lot of cons, so
Yeah.
it's like it's a it just, I, we don't have too much more time on the call.
Yeah.
So I don't want to get into too much, but I asked somebody else about like sort of the reciprocal nature of it. Like if there's a lot of cons and then it kind of generates creators and then creators go to the
Mhm.
cons and then other people see that they can be creators. Is
Yep.
that like very simple? Like, is that like a yes, no? You've seen that kind of thing happening?
I will say it's a yes and no. Because sometimes you will find people at conventions that are creating in other industries.
Hmm.
So like I met Rick Hines, who is a novel writer, and eventually he started writing in RPGs, and him and I had become friends because I bought his book, read it, absolutely loved it, did a review on it, and then we started joking around on social media and found out he also lives like 2 hours from me. So um so it kind of turns into a whole thing of you meet people, you realize where their creative aspects are, and then you can make connections that way, bring them into the industry, or they bring you into the industry.
Right.
So
Awesome. Oh, okay. So, Crystal, thank you so much for talking to me today. And before we sign off, I
yeah.
want to get tell people where they can find more about you, or you mentioned a podcast. I know
Yep.
you've hosted panels. Like, tell us where we can get more of what you do on the internet.
Absolutely. So you can find my personal stuff at thegeekypanda.com. And that is where I have links to all of my products that are currently out and for sale. You can find, I have a podcast called the TTRPG Mentorship Podcast. And you can find that right now we're doing the writer's track. You can find that at Darker Days Radio, which is also where I co-host for a whole bunch of stuff. And I have a lot, most of the panel recordings for Gamehole Con and Gen Con up there as well for the TTRPG mentorship track. So you'll be able to hear recordings of those panels. Other than that, you can find me on social media at Body and Soul 152.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you for your
Yeah.
time today, and for sharing all your knowledge with us.
Thank you
And
for having me.
yeah, of course. We'll see you on the internets.
Yes, sounds good. We'll see you on the internets.